So you've done a heap of research and you're waiting patiently for your new camera to arrive. And the day comes, it's finally here. Nice. Now what? So in this week we will be talking about the exposure triangle. So the exposure triangle is a system that we use to help us control the light coming into the camera and help us more accurately capture what we see. So why a triangle? This refers to ISO, aperture and shutter speed. So most cameras have semi-manual settings, so you can prioritize each one of these, but in this video we're going to be learning how to take full control of the manual settings and get the most out of your image. So for simplicity purposes of this video, we're going to be sticking with 24 frames per second frame rate, because this is what looks most pleasing to the human eye and gives us the most natural motion blur for video. So firstly, we're going to be talking about shutter speed. So to set the shutter speed, this needs to be around 2 times your frame rate, and this is also known as the 180-degree rule. So times 24, which is your frame rate, that equals 48. So most cameras won't go to a 48 shutter speed. So the closest to that is 50, and just stick it on that. That is the easiest way to get a nice looking image out of your camera. So just to understand what shutter speed does, so the lower the shutter speed, the more motion blur is added, and it makes it look a bit weird. The higher the frame rate, the sharper the image becomes and the more jarring it is. Each of these can be used as a stylistic choice, but for the most part you want to keep things looking as natural as possible. So moving on to aperture, or f-stop as it sometimes is on your lens. This is how we control the depth of field. The lower the f-stop, say 1.8, can make a really soft image, bringing attention to tiny details in the frame that you want to draw attention to. So at the other end of the scale, say f22 or f16, something like that, this will close up the aperture, letting hardly any light in, and will make everything in focus. Again, each can be used as a stylistic choice, but try and stay away from the very top end of your camera, because that'll make the image look slightly weird, and any sort of dust particles that are on your lens, it'll show up straight away. So try and stick to the bottom end, boost it up when you want to, but yeah, that is aperture. So to try not to be too complicated with this and get too sciencey, ISO is the sensitivity of your camera's sensor. So the lower the setting generally means a cleaner image. So you bump it down to 100, that's probably where you're going to get the cleanest image from out of your camera. You can bump it up when you're in a low light situation, but use this with caution, because so each time you bump up the ISO, you introduce more noise to the image, and when you start getting up to the thousands, your image is just going to be not usable. So definitely use it with caution, try and keep it as low as possible, and that's ISO. We now know the settings to use. For the most part, the shutter speed stays the same. The ISO, we try and keep it as low as possible, and the aperture we can control to sort of adjust the light levels as and when we need. But there's also a tool that we can use to keep an eye on the levels, just to make sure that we're exposing the image correctly. So if you go through the camera settings, you can turn this on through the display. That's if your camera has it. Most cameras do have it. So basically a histogram is just a tool that captures the entire range that your camera can capture. So anything below the bottom line is not being captured in the shadows, and anything above the top line is clipping your highlights, so you're losing detail there. Sometimes it can be helped, so we try and keep the image in between these two lines, and that will give us the most dynamic range. So it also helps us to balance out the image and keep everything where we want to be. Help us dial in them settings rather than just relying on our eyes. As always, all of these settings are just a guide, so all these rules are good to know, but as always there's an exception and you can always break the rules, but knowing the rules is key to getting a good image out of your camera. But wait, here you ask, my shutter speed's locked in, my ISO's as low as it can go, and I still want that shallow depth of field. What do I do? ND filters, they are a lifesaver, but we'll save that for another video. I feel like there's a lot of information to take in. If you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate you watching. Leave a comment below, let me know how you get on, and happy shooting. See you later.